What's going on, everybody? We are back again with another podcast. It is Lizzie and I talking today, the Insert Name podcast. Today we are going to be talking about the relationship between power and freedom and all of the stories we've been learning about in class and how they relate to our modern day problems that affect us. So, the stories we're going to be talking about today are the Censors, Malala's speech, and Cage Bird.
So, the main question that we wanted to answer within this podcast and the assignment was, what are the privileges and obligations that come with freedom? And with Malala, I think that the most obvious one and the one that stuck out to me was education and your privilege and freedom that come along with it. So I think it's really interesting how she was able to kind of turn her hardship when she was shot and be able to say, I forgive the person who shot me. I would not want revenge or vengeance back. And she took her values and what she was able to learn and grow from and say, here I am. I will still stand up for what I believe in despite what you might say or disagree. And I like how she becomes an advocate for others and herself, especially with how in the quote in the speech, there's a quote that she mentions about Malala Day, where she says, "Dear brothers and sisters, do you remember one thing? Malala Day is not my day. Today is the right of every woman, every boy, and every girl who have raised their voice for rights." And then she goes on to mention other human rights workers and other people who are still fighting and still advocating for their own hardship. Sure. And I think that, in our modern society, we definitely have a privilege, one of our...
That we almost neglect.
Yeah, in a sense. Yeah. I wouldn't say necessarily that we directly neglect it, but we kind of do. Mm-hmm. Well, especially growing up in a first world, it's I wake up every day and I'm like, why do I have to go to school? I don't want to go to school. I want to stay home and do nothing.
I agree, yeah.
But sure. I'm sure, despite the fact that everybody might have those days, I think it's also interesting how, because we never, not everyone, but, a lot of us, I feel have never had to understand that hardship of, your education might actually be taken away from you. Sure. And so I find it so valuable that even despite that, she's still able to say, I don't care. Here I am. I will keep fighting for my rights and for everyone's right. It does not matter about me. I want to make sure that this is something that everyone deserves and everyone can have access to. Sure. So it's very powerful.
And I think this message is incredibly powerful for us to, it's very inspiring just for us to keep going in school and go the furthest we can, because people like Malala grew up not having the ability to be
or maybe not the same level of education. Beyond going into that, one of the other poems that you mentioned that you want to talk about was Cage Bird.
Right, yes. So when I was reading up on the Cage Bird, I saw a very sharp resemblance to kind of teenagers in their development throughout their life. I saw the connection between how some teenagers struggle or they struggle with their own identity, or they feel trapped almost, and I saw that within the Cage Bird as well, and I think it's more of a simpler message that you can get out of the poem, but I do think it's a good one. Some of the quotes I got were, "Our free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends," and then at the end of the poem, "A cage bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still." I think that this correlates to that message of the struggle for identity during this time, and I just think it's really powerful, and it helps us to realize that that we will eventually become the person we want to, I guess.
Yeah, I could see that, sort of how it's... I know this may not be the biggest issue or the one that struck out the most, but this is, I think, one that you can pull as a personal one, or from school, high school, college, I guess really just any kind of part in your life, how it's a giant, and I think of it as a giant analogy of upon meeting a person or being constricted into this norms of society and feeling you can't fully express yourself, you might want to advocate for your rights, or the fact that you have a I don't know, you could be different, and you should be allowed to be different, but at the same time it's as you keep advocating for yourself, you become like the free bird in a
Right.
sense. Like your identity is able to be like expressed to your extent. You're able to feel comfortable in your own skin and comfortable being around other people as who you are.
Mhm.
So like your identity, the free bird is like, or the cage bird could eventually become free or was free, and it's just kind of like a giant comparison.
Yeah.
So
And you wanted to talk about
the
the
censors.
censors, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so the censors is an interesting one because I think it's cool to see how like the censorship of like education is kind of like the censorship of phones or
Oh, yeah.
books in our school. Like I mean,
I hear
even
that.
with the current phone policy that we have, I think it's cool to consider. Like I'm sure that some people could be on either sides of this on whether certain information or like our phones in general should be a censorship. Like should we
Oh,
be
for sure.
allowed to have the information that comes with it while we're working in class? That
I know.
where should you have that on you right now?
Yeah, this is a study hall. It's okay.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Oh, yeah.
That's my bad. Um,
But yeah, I
I think-
totally agree.
yeah,
It's I think it is a very like it's a surprising comparison. I feel like it's very
Mhm.
close.
well, I mean, other totalitarian
There
government.
you go.
I think that it's interesting to see how Juan is changed throughout the story, and I think that the
For sure.
most like influential piece that we get is from like the very last paragraph. Like it's
Mhm.
seems like most obvious where his basket, or that's what it says, his basket for censored letters became the best fed as well as the most cunning basket in the whole censorship division. He was about to congratulate himself for finally having discovered his true mission when his letter to Mariana reached his hands. Naturally, he censored it without regret, and just as naturally, he couldn't stop them from executing him the following morning, another victim of his devotion to work. So,
It totally
looking at
shows
that,
it totally shows his transformation
Mhm.
100 like full circle.
I like seeing how he goes, like, it's a total 180. He goes from, like,
Oh yeah.
not necessarily rebelling, but feeling like I need to get this letter, make sure that other people can't see it,
Mhm.
to, like, fully conform to the society. And he's essentially just used up by
Right.
the government in a
Mhm.
way until he's just like killed and he's like chewed up, spit out,
Right.
done with him.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't necessarily say that that's an extreme that we could see like within schools and censorship, but I think it is interesting to see how the censorship of certain books or information or like even your personal device
Right.
could impact your views or how you go about your life. Like, I mean,
For sure. And we're used to having these. And
yeah,
and then-
absolutely.
right. And then this year, especially once we came in, we had to put them in the phone caddies
Mhm.
when we got into class, and it was definitely a big shift. And I
It
think,
was a big shift.
Mm.
So I think
Yeah.
that's definitely one that you can connect back from
for
censorship.
sure.
And I think that like overall, these are all very interesting ways about like privileges and obligations that come with
I
freedom.
would
Like
agree.
if you talk about how like your freedoms of having a personal device,
Right.
your freedom to be an individual,
Your freedom to have an education.
yeah, in education, yeah. Like I think these are all really interesting, and and it's cool to see the obligations that come along with it. Like what to an extent could be censored on your phone. How could that censorship impact you as you grow as a
For sure.
person?
Yeah.
And I think that these are all really important questions to consider, like as we wrap up.
Mhm.
So, like, what do you think overall?
I mean, I think that you just really summed it up like fantastically, and
Thank you.
yeah, and I think that we have ran out the time allotted, and please tune in for our next episode. It'll be coming out soon, and have a fantastic day. This is Insert Name Podcast signing off. Goodbye.